Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Greg Riley, and Ashley Buckhold dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Lumber Word. I think it's episode 76. We're filming it on the 23rd of May, 2024. Excited to have Casey O'Neill again from Industrial Forest Products. Welcome back, Casey.
Thanks, guys. Always fun to be back.
Little trivia here. You know Bishopville, South Carolina, where Industrial Forest Products is headquarters at, is the home to the Pearl Friar Topiary Garden. Just wanted everybody to know that. And I'm pretty sure Charles probably frequents the Topiary Garden on a regular basis just to get his zen on, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I could just see Charles. He posts up in there for sure. For sure.
He needs to chill out and zen out a little
bit.
Say,
he needs some zen. I think I sent him some sand and a rake the other day.
I wonder if those topiary plants are trimmed back to the exact size or if they're over or under a little. That's an inside joke. We'll leave it at that.
Oh, he's gonna love listening to this show.
Yeah, so, he's getting called out.
Yeah, I'm just putting I'm putting a new deck around my house and I put new brick paver in.
I heard you got a really small deck, Ash.
It's a smaller deck than I really want, but it's wide.
Isn't everybody's deck a little smaller than they like?
So here's the thing. I'm trying to have them on the front of my house. I have, stairs going up to my house and a little stairway into the back. I'm like, hey guys, could you just put on could you take the runners and the risers off? Don't put new stairs in. I just want you to replace the top and bottom of my stairs. What do you think, Matt, they want for something like that? Just to replace my stairs with
just
composite.
Your stairs? How many steps are there?
There's 5, and they're not replacing the actual stringers. They're just replacing the stairs, the kickers, and the top.
I mean, I'd do it for you for like $800, buddy.
I said 500.
I'd say probably like 3,000.
You're about. So when I asked them to actually do the back steps, which only have 3, they wanted like $5,400.
Oh my god!
I'm like, dude. I'm like, okay, come on, like. I get it. There's $500 of material and it's a one-day job. And Greg's like, why don't you just do it? I'm like, I didn't want to, but that just forced my hand to do that again now. So gonna strap the nail belt on and go for it.
That's funny.
So let's get rolling into this here. Wanted to talk a little bit about quick intro again to the market. Seems like we got a little bit of bite of stuff, and Matt and I were just talking. We were just talking with the whole group. Matt, you were in Denver?
Yeah, I was in Denver Monday and Tuesday and left yesterday morning to fly back to Portland. I've been doing business in Colorado really since I started in the business in 1994, so that's not unusual for me to go over there. But I hadn't been there for like a couple years, and so I wanted to go back there and shake hands and say hi and just get the lay of the land. The good thing, I guess, from my perspective is there's still a lot of people moving into Colorado. And I did see signs on the highway of starting homes. They're still building developments around the Denver Metroplex of you can get into an entry-level home in the low 400s right now. And I'm sure they'd finance it for 5.25 or 5.5 if you really wanted to bargain with them. So, I mean, it's for a major metropolitan area that's desirable climate and living space, then I can see why people are still wanting to move there.
Got it.
Cheaper than Portland.
Casey, what kind of week are you having?
Steady. Seeing a good, like kind of everybody's trying to do what they need to do today and kind of ease into the holiday weekend, I guess. But yeah, I have no complaints right now.
Greg, how about kicking it over to you? What once we get past all the trucks and cars moving around at different locations and chasing some stuff?
If it wasn't for the railroad delivering cars to the wrong place, reloads loading the wrong product on the truck, and a few other assorted issues, everything would be great. I just highlighting a couple of economic statistics this week. We had existing home sales come out Tuesday. They were down 1.9%, 4.1 million, which is down a couple percent from last year. It's the same story there's only 3.5 months supply of existing homes. So, like a balanced market would be like 5 or 6 months. And it's the same thing as that. There's so many people that are they're in their home and they're gonna stay there. I'm still surprised we haven't seen a little more translation in the repair and remodeling, but that's another story. New single family home sales came out this morning and they were down 4.7% in April, and they're down 7.7% from a year ago. I mean, mostly I think that's on the uptick in interest rates. The month supply is 9.1 right now. We have had completions continue to drastically outpace starts and permits, and so we're getting more supply in the market. The prices though year over year are pretty flat, which I think is a positive. The question is going to be do builders decide over the next couple of months to be more aggressive in their incentives to move that inventory? And it depends, I guess, market by market. But that's something to watch. I had a guy today tell me it's a pretty dire outlook that he had, and I said, we really need interest rates to come down. I said, well, the environment where interest rates would come down at this point, I don't think we want that. And that being said, I go, the disconnect I have is I have stock market at all-time record high. Ashley, that was really good that you bought all that NVIDIA stock last year. I mean, I'm surprised you're even still working after that trade.
The guy that runs NVIDIA is an Oregon State grad, the Harvard of the West, baby. Go Oregon State Beavers.
Go, yeah. You know what? Don't be too hard on the beef.
So what's that housing stuff? What are all those housing numbers telling you? Because, and I'm starting to see feedback where there's starting to be some price. I shouldn't say there's less accumulation in price. So Texas and Florida seem to be pretty flush with new homes right now, and they seem to have the highest level of inventory and rising. Does that make sense?
I haven't dug into the state by state, Ash. I don't know. I mean, from a business standpoint, those are two markets that seem to be cruising along at a really, really good pace with no slowdown.
Let's jump in a couple of the markets. Casey, love having you on. OSB, we had a short covering bounce last week after selling off $250 a thousand, give or take, in different regions. Print was up a little bit yesterday. What's going on in OSB, and what's your thought there?
It's a little tricky right now, but I'd say the trading levels that are going on in the cash market for people who need wood in the next 2 weeks are probably still $40 to $50 over kind of the random print price. There's definitely still a pinch there, and people want to kind of get through Memorial Day weekend to kind of gauge some of the box store outtake. But the mills have done a pretty good job at clearing the deck when things were going, down real fast, and they didn't trade in $10 increments. All of a sudden it was 50, 60, $70 over, and they're just kind of waiting to see if the market goes to them. Mixed reports out there. I know a lot of people who think it's smoke and mirrors right now, and I know other people I think I'm leaning towards the fact that, this could be a little stickier than people want it to be for a while, but we want to watch out for some of the other regions kind of creeping into the southeast or southwest, like maybe from Western Canada or Eastern Canada. If that starts to happen, it'll probably cap the tightness of those markets.
I mean, the one thing when you look at the OSB price here, I mean, it's kind of a middle of the road price. It's obviously profitable for producers, but it's not too high for the end users compared to what they've been used to over the last few years. It would seem like it's kind of a nice equilibrium.
Yeah, good point, Greg. Another market, Casey, that you're in. Two things I want to ask about it. Southern Pine. So the Southern Pine market, another week of printing slightly up. So I'm guessing the low end trades, I'm not talking about the print prices, the low end trade numbers have been taken out. But the interesting thing I'm hearing and seeing also, and maybe a world you live in, the low grade market and the pellet market starting to fight back a little bit. Is that what are you seeing on pine in those markets?
Yeah, I'll start with the low grade. A little better. It's continued to get a little bit better month over month here for the most of this year. The prices on that stuff haven't like escalated quickly, but they've grinded up on the low side. On regular two and better and plate and that kind of thing, off the low trade after the market flushed and went down $100 in a month, we're probably halfway back. We're probably up 50 to $60 on a lot of core items. We'll see. These market cycles have been kind of like 6-week cycles, and we're probably 4 weeks into this on the pine world. But the orders that we're seeing and having to buy from the mill and able to sell, I mean, like I said, it's 50, 60, $70 up, depending what item it is.
Have any of the, I mean, order file always leads price. Have any of these mills been able to get a farther than a 2-week order file out yet at any of the Southern Pine locations?
They don't. They're not. They don't want that. They don't want that.
Yeah, they don't really trade that way, Ashley. That's not how they do it.
That's when they're off the market, or God forbid we build them. And legitimately at these prices, why would you want a big order file?
You don't really want to build a $300 order file. I have a question for Casey, going back to the OSB. So are you I wouldn't say concerned or cognizant is more the question I'm asking is, are you cognizant of new production coming in OSB, and at what point does that start to hit the market?
There is a little bit more coming up quickly, and that's probably about 12 to 16 months away, when it just like the core 4x8 7/16. Where we're really seeing a creep in is import, and that's really affecting the 3/4 market and the 4x9 market. One big player that's been around for a while, but it seems like there's a couple more showing up. And it's really kind of suppressing that 3/4 spread that's traditionally the 7/16. So think about 2x4 16 Euro lumber doing that to the Canadian mills. It's happening in OSB right now in 3/4.
Right.
Great feedback. Hey Matt, so U.S. species and Western spruce, what have you been seeing this week in those areas?
Well, remember I was gone most of the week, but I made the observation yesterday when I sat down and opened up my laptop that all the internal mill sales lists for the West Coast lumber, whether it was green Doug fir, dry Doug fir, or dry hem fir, was pretty much turned red. Looking at the spruce list, however, no, there was very few things turned red. So the excitement seems to be a little bit more concentrated on dry hem fir, dry Doug fir, green Doug fir. We have order file there. We've been able to push back on prices. I told you guys a couple weeks ago in these discussions that we were starting to see more liquidity and we could start winning some of the arguments. That has borne fruit and it's continued on. So I would like to see a little bit more of that in spruce.
Yeah.
Right now, the spruce mills seem to be offering me plenty of lumber. I don't think the mills are willing to take the prices that they would have taken 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think all of the bottom is out of the market, right? And Greg called it. It's just taken a little bit longer to sort of develop than we might have seen in previous kind of market rallies. The board's up a little bit. It hasn't flushed out after the May expiration, which is a good sign. I'm just sort of analyzing things here. I feel a little bit bullish here in the near term. I think between now and end of June, maybe even in July, we're going to have some pretty good trading situations. Long term, I'm maybe a little bit more nervous about demand and supply. I wonder if the mills are going to really address production in the 3rd and 4th quarter or not. This is where they make their hay on logging, right? So if you're a Western mill, you're gonna get in the woods and you're gonna start investing in log deck here from June through September until the fire season comes. It'll be interesting to me to see how the mills play this as the year goes forward. But is the market going to get better because of a surge in demand? I don't think so.
I learn a lot still from listening to people talk and conversations I have with people, right? You, Casey, everybody. So
I heard that's true. Especially when you have conversations with your wife, that's where you learn some of the most important things, right?
It's all about listening. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, Greg.
I'm always so much smarter after one of those sessions. Yes.
I was listening to you this week talking to some mills that you talked to, and one particular, and I'm going to segue this into the Eastern spruce market. And I heard you say, hey, this is when I counter you $10 or $15 and we agree on $5 right now in this market. And that's just the way it works. And I'm not sure if And what I noticed is from 2 weeks ago, that was an easy conversation, and it was harder, that conversation yesterday, right? So I think Eastern people are still flush with items to sell, and we see this on lists coming over. But some of the key items have the low end trades have come out of them, especially the harder to get stud items and all that. So, Greg, I'll turn it over to you, like kind of on that conversation you had, and what are you seeing on the Eastern spruce in Canada?
Back to Matt's point, I mean, the market has bottomed out. The low trade on a lot of items is out, but there's not a lot of upward momentum. To your point, I mean, two things is, these are below cost of production. So there's a number of mills that didn't sell as much lumber on the way down, and they built inventories and they felt like they were going to get better numbers. So that's one of the things that's acting as, a cap on the market, because they're going to sell a bunch of lumber. Well, okay, and that's lumber that's on the ground, and they still have more lumber on the ground. They may be building a little bit of a shipping file, but because of that excess inventory of dressed lumber that they built, they're not in a position to raise prices. And, in the marketplace, the longer, the more times that I buy lumber, and then 2-3 days later, a week later, I can still buy lumber at the same price, makes me feel like, boy, are you a dummy, right?
You're making me feel like a dummy, Greg, because of the conversation we had this about 20 minutes ago. Are you calling me a dummy?
That's not where I went with that, but
well, that's where you ended up, buddy.
Yeah. I see that now. Mistakes. But I'll segue to the European market, and here's what I'm seeing in the European market: drastically less lumber coming in. I look, and we have mill sales agreements representative with 3 producers, and I can tell you that the amount of lumber that we're going to get in the next 60, 90 days is probably 25% of what we have been getting. A perfect example is, I've got Cape Canaveral. We've got virtually nothing on the ground, and our next vessel isn't in until the end of June. And then I don't even have an ETA on the one after that. We usually would get something every 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm thinking that is going to start to have an impact on, and I know that I look at it and say, well, if that's happening to me, us, we're probably not isolated.
Greg, we're noticing that, like, so last week, we're getting calls from everybody that we normally don't, wanting to know if we have a truck of studs in Houston or a truck of Euro studs in the Cape. Then they buy one from us, and we're like, God, that was a great number. The next day they call back and say, do you have 1 or 2 more? These are companies that actually bring their own Euro in, right? So I think we're starting to see a lot less of that, which will in turn put pressure on more premium lumber out of Canada, right? And we talked about this a month and a half ago on this podcast, right? Euro is a premium type of lumber. It competes with the Canadian lumber, less Euro and the premium coming in. We're going to have pressure on more of the premium products out of Canada, if that makes sense.
I mean, and I think the other issue that I see in Eastern Canada is there's a real dichotomy between wormhole lumber and non-wormhole lumber. Why? I can't even imagine why, but what I've seen, there's a few producers that still cutting predominantly in that area, and their lists and prices are bigger, where the people that are producing where that's not a potential issue seem to be in a much better situation.
Great point, Greg. Matt.
Hey, Ash. So the Euro studs out there that you guys have had a good market for and, getting good prices for, do you think some of that's coming to you or to the European market because of some of the things that's happened in Eastern Canada with like the bug haul stuff?
Great point. You know what? And that certainly could be. I think it's maybe a combination of just less Euro coming over and less studs. We're certainly just getting less. But yeah, it definitely can be, because more inquiry, every email I get, hey, can you quote these, please? No wormhole, right?
Yeah, we're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing that even from the multifamily guys. And it's like, I don't do spruce really, but like I'm like, we're hoping it drives it more into the pine stud production, right? But it just it's interesting.
I mean, the amount of discount that pine studs are to spruce studs, that should drive the business on its own when you're $100 cheaper, right?
Well, there's another reason why I think, Greg, you're hitting on something that's also in the back of the minds of the spruce producers, a lot of whom own yellow pine sawmills. That there's such a huge price discrepancy between what spruce is going for versus what yellow pine's going for. I mean, Casey, you've sent me offerings on number 3 before, and I'm selling trucks for $100 to $150 higher than what you're selling yellow pine for. Imagine if you're a spruce mill.
Yep.
And you own yellow pine mills, right? You're like, we're selling 300 mil on two and better, and we're getting 420 mil on spruce, So I don't know. I think that there's some of that psychology at work here. But the observation I wanted to touch on, actually, just listening to you guys talking here the last 10 minutes, it sounds to me like between the Euros and the mills themselves, that there's going to be a little bit less fiber available here to the market over the next 60 to 90 days. And a wise man once said that with interest rates at 7.5% right now, people that manage inventory are probably going to reduce their inventory holdings. Like, isn't that what the whole world's working on right now, is low inventories? The bosses are screaming, get your inventory down. We had this discussion last week too. Remember this? Or maybe it was 2 weeks ago with Kyle. People are having to pay interest bills and storage bills and carrying charges and blah, 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 blah. Well, if you don't feel like you're going to be able to extract a real margin out of your inventory over the next 5-6 months, and you're tired of paying high interest charges and high storage charges and high everything else charges to do it, you're just going to reduce your inventory exposure from 100% to 50%. And at the same time, the retailers are trying to keep lean inventories. So we're going to run into a situation here this summer where people are all just kind of low on wood. And I think that's, something to pay attention to. And it's something to be cognizant of. It seems like that's where we're all heading. Maybe that will actually have a real impact on the price of lumber as we go.
Good point, Matt. I just want to do one quick rant, and then you guys can respond to it, and then we'll go to Mary Day Dump. So I put out on X yesterday, formerly known as Twitter, I go, futures to cash basis is about a $50 per 1,000 board feet on Western and Eastern 2x4 random right now, with CME being a premium. Hemfer Coastal is about a $15 basis to Chicago. Just so everybody that's listening knows, you can deliver coastal Hemfer on the CME contract now, along with Doug fir. You can't deliver Canadian Hemfer, but you can deliver coastal Hemfer. Everybody keeps telling me, like, I'm going to jump out of the second floor window. I don't think it's that far. If I hear one more time about the short funds and the reason that that's why the market's going to go up on the CME. We're a $50 premium right now. If the market, and I'm sorry for all the people that are long on this side, and you may be right on this, but
you're going to get some hate. You're going to get some hate emails, Ash.
Here's the deal. The board, in my opinion, can't run up $50 a 1,000 because everybody wants it to, because of forest fires, a strike, and I'm long, unless cash goes with it, in my opinion. Because, Greg, what about basis? It always works, right?
Always works.
So
always works.
I want lumber to go up. I really do. And it would be better for me if it does. But I don't see the board moving up in a vacuum. A little move up yesterday, 2 days ago. You need cash to go up in order for the board to move higher at this point. Just my thought. And what say you guys about that?
Just go back to what I said a second ago. I think that with people committed to lower inventories and higher costs to carry, you'll just see the price of lumber naturally rise. So even if the board doesn't go anywhere for the next 60 days, you would expect the cash prices to filter up. And we've already seen that in dry Hemfer. Look, you're talking about a $15 discount for hemlock. I mean, in my career, hemlock always traded for less than spruce, not more. But yet we're selling Hemfer all day long at these types of prices. So, now spruce is the cheapest species in North America besides yellow pine. And there's a lot of people that won't buy yellow pine. Like, I just sold 3 cars of spruce 2 and better to a guy that runs a truss plant. He's not going to switch to yellow pine. He's just not.
Everybody that's switched at this point with that basis has already switched.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, is there some industrial applications where yellow pine is going to make inroads? Absolutely. Are there some 2x6 and wider applications where yellow pine is going to continue to make inroads? You bet. But on 2x4 yellow pine, it's a different animal. It's not considered. It's just different. Trust me. I would be betting on the natural price of spruce 2x4 and 2x6 cash lumber just sort of rising slowly but surely over the next 60 to 90 days, whereas futures just sort of sits there and really doesn't do much at all. Because there's a lot of people that are wishing it up, and but you don't trade lumber on hope and wishes.
So, like Greg always says, the markets don't move long term because of forest fires and rail strikes, right? I mean, forest fires happen every year. They're horrible. Hopefully they're less this year, right? And in areas that aren't affecting any communities, because that's terrible. We don't want that to happen. But like I said, it seems like there's a lot of hope still in the market. Greg, thoughts on that?
I'm out on a limb from a month ago saying that I thought lumber prices would be higher, sometime in June to July. And I've also said I don't know whether they're going to be like, $10 or $20 higher or, $100 higher. I mean, to your point on the futures premium, Ash, we can hold that premium for another, couple, 3 weeks with no cash activity. We're starting to see, both some liquidation and rolling from July to September. So that's going to happen. The cash market feels like it's at equilibrium. To Matt's point, which is on point, the customers aren't going to build an inventory. The business that's out there, while it's steady, it's not growing. And the pressure on them is to increase turns, right? So you don't have the opportunity to make additional margin because of positioning. So we're going to increase turns and lower that cost of carry. That having been said, and the market's in balance. The customers are buying every day, every week. Replacement to keep that inventory in place. They're not going to build. They're going to reduce like a little bit, I think, if they can, but there's probably not that much left to do on that either. So until there's a catalyst, this is the market that we're in. Flat, maybe with a modest upward bias. Do I think it could be more? I do, but there's a lot of people that think that. So, I hate thinking that.
Perfect. Casey, what about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, until we get out of this kind of range bound and 6-week cycle, that's kind of how we're playing this marketplace, right? And we just saw a very good example of about 3-4 weeks ago. A lot of people came in to cover some jobs, June, July, August, get some stuff off their plate onto people who, take risk and do that kind of thing, right? And in Pineland, we had to say no to a lot of bids, right? And the ones that we took, we got a modest premium for, and thank goodness we got that because we can manage through it right now. But if you didn't, you're working really hard to make no money or lose money, and that's just what we're doing right now, guys. And it shall get better, but I don't think this year's been bad by any means, but I don't see a huge aggressive wind at your back. It might be a 2025, guys. I mean, I think we're pretty range bound.
So what we're saying here, all of us, is it's just a good. It's probably the worst is over for now, but it's a grinding market, and you're not going to have one of those markets where you have a 10-year market in 1 year. This
is trench warfare. This is
normal trading, really. This is
we're on our belly taking like inches of ground every day. Mary Dave Dump Ash.
I'll start off, gents here.
No. I'm going to start. I always finish. I'm going to have to roll off. Broken record. I am married to basis trades on 2x4 MSR spruce and 2x4 16s. I mean, come on. Like you look at if 2x4 random length is worth $540 Chicago, how can 2x4 16s stay where they are? They're undervalued. They're a high liquidity, high volume item. It's just a question of when, not if, they're going to come into play. The MSR is starting to get sneaky a little bit better, and I think that's really going to come home here over the next 60 to 90 days. You're going to start to get a little more premium in that. We put that trade on figure and are out on, at least on the 1650 was going to be the 2 and better price. we have shipped some. I'm not going to say that we haven't shipped some on orders already.
Good point.
So that's my merry date. This is a broken record again. Dump. What am I going to dump at this point in time? I mean, other than anything that's old or that I shouldn't have in my inventory, it's a broken record. But I just don't see anything. Like, everything is undervalued. If there's something to sell, it's CME futures because it's the highest price. That's the highest price lumber out there.
Thank you, Greg. Casey, Matt.
I'll go. I want to marry 2x6 everything. Yellow pine is cheap on 2x6 2 and better. I'm talking about 2x6 2 and better. But all Western species are a discount to 2x4. And then on green Doug fir, it's a significant discount to 2x4. Yellow pine, it's damn near 300 mil. That's just cheap fiber. I would marry 2x6 of all dry, random or straight lengths. And then I'm dating 2x4 16s Euro or premium if I can buy them domestically. The prices are down $100. I'm betting the long run that those go back up closer to the $100 that they just gave up. I'm willing to stack some 2x4 16s premium or 2 and better right now. And then as far as dumping goes, I think if mills just sit there and stare at random lengths, they're going to identify 2x12 as an item that they want to produce more of because it still starts with a 4 pretty much everywhere. And then finger joint studs are a little bit overvalued at the moment compared to solid studs, and so they're starting to give back some price leverage. And they've been at a very, very high price point here for an extended period of time. So I wouldn't say I really want to dump them because it's still a captive production environment there. But if I had some high dollar finger joints laying around, I'd find a way to get rid of them because they are resetting in price as we speak.
Good point, Matt. Casey?
I like 2x4 number 2 16s and pine. We've seen good activity every day on those, and the prices are, kind of, rising. But I think there's still some room to go there. That non-grade stamp Euro, I mean, to your point, we use it for, our shed production, and you want to talk about a market that's just hard to stay in supply with demand still behind it. That's that. And so I think that's going to just be the way it is for the majority of the year. I would say date, kind of self-fulfilling, but our 2x4 and 2x6 number 2 9s and pine, just a value compared to other species, and always good liquidity on them. But they've been a little too cheap. Finally seeing some appreciation there. And I was going to say 2x4 number 3 spruce as a dump, but Matt just told me he had a huge day and selling it all over the place. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, so I'll jump into mine. Obviously what Greg said, I like that trade on the 2x4 Southern Yellow Pine basis trade. I don't talk to many Southern Pine mills. We are putting that trade on long pine, short the board in 2x4 16s, but I've got a couple items that I want to date. I was quoting a bunch of stuff yesterday into the Kentucky and Tennessee market, and I kept getting killed on 2x6 8-footers and 10-footers because I'm thinking East centric Quebec and all that. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, damn, look at the price of 2x6 8-foot number 2 Western spruce and 2x6 10-foot Western spruce. And so I was out actively shopping some cars at 8, 10s, and 12s. 12s not so much, but sometimes you need them to mix a car. 8-footers on print last week were somewhere around 258 mil, which is 360 something into the Midwest. That's a really cheap item in my opinion, and liquid. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. Anything that's a stud too, I noticed 2x6, 8-foot, 9-foot trims and number 2, they're hard to find. They're moving like crazy. We don't take counters on those. We move them. People are paying for them. 2x4 94 and a quarter, 2x4 92 and 5/8 2 and better. All the different stud trims are moving right now, especially if you got them for prompt. So I'm looking at that. And the dump wise, mine's a little bit different. It's and I don't want to dump them, but so it's May 23rd right now. Most of the stuff that we have coming in on vessels into the Cape and into Houston, I can't really hold it down there for too long because that stuff, you don't want that sitting in Houston for 3 months, right? Especially in this kind of weather. And if you notice, Houston just got pounded by rain last week, unfortunately, a ton. I don't want to, but I have to move all my stuff out of Houston because we have another vessel coming in a month. And I just don't want stuff sitting there for very long, because you don't need to deal with, hey, there's moisture on this or there's moisture on that. So anything that's sitting in the Cape in Houston, I'm going to turn it quickly. But otherwise, in my northern reloads and anything, I like 16, so we're selling them and just replacing them, if that makes sense. But that's kind of what we're looking at. But yeah, that's my marry, date, and dump for the week. Well, I appreciate it, boys. I'll let everybody get back into it. Casey, thanks for showing up, and Matt, I appreciate it. I'm glad you're back from Denver and can get your feet back, get wet again, and
Thanks, Ben.
And we'll start chatting some more, guys.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.